guys, it's MJ, and let's talk about the moon. It is a full moon this evening, and I am off mommy duty. My daughter is with her Nana this evening, so I thought, why not? Let's talk about the moon card. What is really remarkable this evening, aside from the fact that I have a night off, is that you can actually see the moon in the sky. And for Seattle, to see anything other than clouds in the sky in February, it's really, really just incredible. So it was such a treat to go outside and see this big, bright ball of beautiful light coming up over the pine trees. It was just so spectacular. So let's talk about the moon card, and we'll start off with the Rider-Waite. Here we have, you see here, we have a dog and we have a wolf, and you can tell that they're barking up at the moon. They're being their natural selves. One, of course, is domesticated. The other is wild. And this is where they work together. You can see their posture is very similar. In fact, almost like the domesticated dog is really going at the moon, whereas the wolf is sitting patiently, howling at it. They're both acting as they should be. They're honoring their spirit, their true self. And with this card, it is a sign to let your wild side be. It's a sign to acknowledge, perhaps, speaking of dogs here, mine just went by, acknowledging, that you have this duality within you. You have this part of you that has been domesticated. As we are humans, we are domesticated animals, but there's also that wild side that still lives within each and every one of us. Here we have this crayfish that's coming up out of the water, and if you think about how a crayfish usually lives on the surface of under the water, right? He lives way down deep in the sand and just comes up every now and then. If you think about that being a belief, or perhaps ideas that were instilled as a child that surface every once in a while just to wreak havoc on your day. If you had a parent tell you that you weren't a good painter or drawer or whatever, if you had a teacher perhaps at school, and we see a lot of this, we see a lot of art shaming, and you don't realize until you're an adult how impactful it is if a teacher says, well, that's not how you draw a horse, and the kid feels a deep level of shame or embarrassment that's associated with that time. What happens is they suppress it, and when it becomes time for you to stand up in a meeting and give your creative idea, you kind of want to shrink back, almost like that crayfish, right, going back into the water. So when you think about how the crayfish relates in this card, when you see it, it's a good time to ask yourself, hey, am I letting these beliefs from the past surface to control the situation? Here we have these two towers, and I notice a lot of people really look for the towers when they're looking at decks that recreate the Rider-Waite-Smith deck. And my crow deck does that. My other two, well, this one kind of the window acts as the opening, that space between. And here is that passage through, and you can see there is a path that's leading you through the tower. It's almost like that path to heaven when you accept who you are, when you embrace the wild and the domesticated, when you acknowledge that you are a whole being, like we have the sun here and we have the moon in it, and it's fused together, it's creating a whole, just like you are a whole being. When you can acknowledge that you have faults and that there is this maybe a darker side, when you face the fear of who you really are, right? I mean, even if it means that you don't like some parts of yourself, it is who you are. And when you can acknowledge those aspects, then you can walk through the gates, or you can walk between this tower and enter, in this case, perhaps heaven, or the other side, perhaps enlightenment. So here with the crow tarot moon, I have this crow perched up here, and you can see these two trees represent the towers. Instead of a crayfish here, I used a fish that would just surface and rise, just to illustrate that point of something that rises up and then resumes its place under the water. And then there is the path here as well. So very similar to these, to the idea with the Rider-Waite. There's also the wild crow, and then there is the caged bird. And this wild crow is looking up at itself, and it's seeing back this shadow, and you can see it's almost hunched over. The position of the crow, and you know what I really find interesting is when people don't see the shadow of the crow shadow in the moon, and they just see it as a broken moon. They're like, oh, the moon looks broken here. Well, it's in the shadow of a crow here. So anyway, when the crow is looking up and it sees itself, what it sees coming back to itself is this bird. It's almost like it's bowing its head. It's conceding almost, you know, to who it is. It's conceding that its space in the world is exactly how it sees itself here. And, you know, there is an element of almost sadness, I feel, with this card here with the Crow Tarot. And same thing with the Wise Dog. I get a feeling of sadness. And, you know, I'm the one who made this, but still, it's like when I look at it, I didn't necessarily create it with that idea, but it's more introspective. It's about going inward. It's about looking at who you are. You know, this is also a chance to let your imagination perhaps have some fun. Use it as a playground, you know, get into the sandbox perhaps of your brain and allow for some playtime and allow for that imagination to conjure up ideas perhaps. You know, it's about letting go of fear as well, and letting go of these ideas that perhaps do surface and you know, cause some drama. Finding out where they are, you know, expand on that idea of, you know, where does this belief come from? Why does it cause me feelings of fear? Am I suppressing it because I don't want to face it? Am I living an illusion, you know, as a result? Am I covering up this fear so much that I'm becoming something that I'm deep down not, right? So here with this Wise Dog, we have this dog, and this card really deviates from the imagery and the symbolism of the Rider-Waite deck. The only, if you were to look for any similarity here, you would see there's a moon, obviously, and the water. And in this case, what the dog is doing, it's really looking inward. It's looking at its reflection in the water, and what it's seeing is almost like a distorted view of itself. And it's meditating on that distorted view. And you can see the moon that is, it's, you know, illuminating from behind. So it's casting this beautiful light onto the water, and it can really see its reflection in a beautiful way as the waves sort of move around here. And so this is really a time when you look at for the Wise Dog, when you see the moon card come up, it's really about going inward. It's about examining areas that you tend not to want to look at. You want to suppress them. You know, it may be confronting, you know, if you're judgmental, if you're fearful, you know, if you're just naturally fearful, where did that come from? What, you know, what causes these feelings to surface? When do they surface? You know, do you notice like on certain, you know, events or during certain events that you kind of get that feeling of fear? Why does that come up at that time? Why does that surface just right there when you're about to make progress or you're about to make a leap, you know, into some new part of your life? Do you notice that's where fear surfaced? So when you see the moon card come up with the Wise Dog, it's time to really take some time to sit down, clear your head. You can see this cloud here behind the dog. You know, get a good vision and allow that light to illuminate areas that house your shadow. You know, that's where your shadow resides. So let it show your shadow here with the Wise Dog. Now with the Grimalkin cat, again, with the Grimalkin deck, again, I really think, you know, cats have their own little personality there. And in this case, what this cat is seeing when it looks into the moon is it sees what it wants to see. It sees that it wants to be not a domesticated house cat in a cage, you know, living in this like luxury, like this like state of luxury. It wants to be a cheetah. It wants to be wild. It wants to be fierce. And because when it looks at itself in the moon, when it sees its reflection in the moon, it sees something like something that's a wild animal. What it does is it reacts, and this is why we have the fishbowl. So in this card here, there's a fish that is flopping around in the water. The bowl has been knocked over, and the cat did it because it's frustrated that it's in a sense a cage. Even though there's a cage here, this cage isn't just for the bird. The house itself is the cage. The domestication is the cage, and it can't live the life it really wants to live. And it sees itself as being this just wild creature trapped in this like lap of luxury, essentially. And because of that, it lashes out. So this is where with the moon card, with the Grimalkin deck, it's about believing illusions and letting these illusions dictate your emotions and your actions as a result of that. And so very different take. Each of the decks really has a different take on that moon. I mean, the moon is so it's expansive and it's beautiful, and it is about feeling fear, and it's about letting that imagination really just come to life. And that can be good and it can be bad if you use that imagination for good, for perhaps perceiving how life could be. If you could visualize solutions, that's a wonderful way of using the imagination. But it can also, you can use that imagination in destructive ways as well. If you want to use that imagination to believe that things are different than they are in reality. If you believe, that everybody's talking about you behind your back, that's your creative mind. If you're somebody who naturally catastrophizes, right? I do this all the time. Oh my God, I go out for a walk with my dog, and I just imagine that there's gonna be these marauders out there, ready to to mug me in our little neighborhood. I'm like, around every corner there could be somebody who's gonna just mug me and take Layla. But that's not the case. That's the fear, and that is the moon, and that is that's where that imagination isn't so great. And so when you see the moon come up, ask yourself, am I buying into an illusion that I'm creating myself? Is this coming from the subconscious? Is this a result of a belief perhaps that was, instilled as a child that is now surfacing like that crayfish? Am I using this time for creative purposes that are beneficial, right? Am I letting my shadow explore parts of my brain so that I can give that wild side some freedom, so I can let it loose in a controlled fashion, so you can use that wild side, you can use that benefit, you can let fear perhaps be a protector and not a deterrent. There's a difference, right? If you let fear guide you, this is how you can tell. If you're walking down the street and it's dark and something tells you to cross the street, and to me, I say, you know what, that's my intuition helping me out here. If you go to walk outside your door and you start having a panic attack because you think that as soon as you cross that threshold, you're going to get attacked, that's your imagination going nuts, right? That's where your creativity is not benefiting you. So when you see the moon, to me, it's like, depending on where I am, what the other cards are that are coming up around the moon card, that really makes a big difference, in how I approach the moon in a reading, whether it's a benefit or if it's something that's causing some destruction, if it's causing illusion, perhaps that's, keeping you in a state of fear. That's really up to you when you're doing the reading, and you're gonna feel that. I think when you're whether you're reading for yourself or someone else, you're going to get that feeling when you see that moon card. It's going to come through, and you're going to get a sense of where that shadow sits for you as an individual. So much love. I hope this makes sense. I hope I helped clear up some of the moon imagery, at least on my decks, and much love. And I think tomorrow, depending on how much I got going on, I'm going to try and get out a couple more of these little card tutorials. I think they're a lot of fun, and so far what I'm seeing is that people are enjoying them. So I will definitely keep going with this, and there's just so much to learn, right? I mean, there's so much to learn with tarot, and I think it's a fun and easy way to do it when I do it in these short little video clips. And you know, really the big key with the moon card, and I always found like learning this one was pretty tough because it made me face fears that I didn't want to face. It made me face a lot of the beliefs that I didn't really want to acknowledge. You know, it's really nice to stay in your comfort zone, and the moon casts a light in such a way that it pushes you out of your comfort zone. So much love to you. Peace, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.